of history on Apache. We came to the North Sea 2003, fought over the FORTIES here from BP. I've personally worked for BP for 25 years, onshore and offshore. Quite comfortable in that organisation, to be honest with you. Wonder what life was like outside of BP. Never had any great desire to go outside of BP. And then this Russian veteran company comes in called Apache that, I'll be honest, there's only one person in the whole of the BP office heard about at that time. Nobody else had. And we thought that we were being put up for sale. It actually been sold on January 11, 2003. So it's quite a culture shock for us. BP is a multi-team organisation. Apache is a very flat organisation. We've got our managing director, vice president. We've got a group of 10 or 11 managers who report to him, and that's where we are. That's how flat we are. We're all working managers, we're working supervisors and team leaders. We all know our business to the end of the day we hope, and that's how we are. We don't manage by committee or by groups. We take personal responsibility. It took us a while, to be honest, to settle down to that type of country, and we certainly had a lot of focus from our Houston-based executive team at that time to help us along that journey, and we got there. Maybe took us 18 months. We rewrote our safety management system, quite happy with that. We made it more bespoke to our current operations. Normally in a procedure for the first 20 pages, they don't mean anything, but we made them mean things to us, rather than looking through all the stuff you don't need to do. And by the end of 2010, I think we were quite a settled operation. We had good continuity of staff, good experienced people, and we all knew where we were, and everybody was happy enough. Our safety performance was good, could be better. We were improving slowly, and then 2011 we purchased the barrel fleet from ExxonMobil and Sage as well. The barrel platforms are similar age to the FORTIES. At the time we put an awful lot of effort into the transition. You wouldn't believe, or you would believe, how much effort we put into it so that we could maintain our safety record. So it was looking pretty good. If you thought that the culture difference between BP and Apache was like that, and between ExxonMobil and Apache was like that. ExxonMobil, a very proficient operation. They're the biggest in the world, one of the biggest in the world. BP, really good. And Apache, a very large independent. We all had our own culture. Things were going along quite well for the first 3 weeks of 2011, and we hadn't changed anything. Same people, same policies, same procedures. We changed the name and the top of ExxonMobil to Apache. Nothing else. Then in the space of 2 weeks we had 3 LTIs on the barrels. The barrels hadn't seen an LTI for, I don't know how long, to be honest with you, a long time. So we wondered what the hell had gone wrong, because nothing had changed. Some people have managed change and other people don't like change, so maybe there's a bit of uncertainty. Our operations team are all staff. We're an ExxonMobil, they were contractors, so we were trying to engage the operations group to become staff at that time. So we started a process to assure everybody that things were going to get better. And FORTIES, we'd invested like $2.5 million over 10 years. In fact, the FORTIES field was supposed to start shutting down this year and decommissioning. But 2 weeks ago we put a new platform offshore, and we've got another 15 to 20 years ahead of us. That's a sort of investment that we brought to FORTIES, and we plan to do the same thing to the barrels as we're going along. And currently we're doing a seismic survey of the field, so hopefully we can open up other opportunities. So it was quite a shock to our system. As you would imagine, the regulators sat up and took notice and said, what's gone wrong? We gave you a little bit of license to say that. We said you would do X, Y, and Z, and we had done that, and they kept a close check on us, so what had gone wrong? So we basically set out about holding, trying to integrate the teams, all Apache teams, so we put in people from FORTIES to barrels and vice versa, so we could cross-match. We held a number of off-site meetings, and we took the whole workforce down to Edinburgh, for 5 or 6 different groups, 50 people at the time. We had our own management team down there, technical authorities, senior engineers. We'd ask what issues they had, and we're trying to build and integrate the teams together. And our safety performance at that time was poor. Not getting away from it, it was poor. starting to get better as at the end of the year got on. So we put an awful lot into it, and one of the main things that we do believe in, fully supportive of, is step change. You know, we bought into the Boots On for Safety campaign when that was introduced, I don't know how many years ago, or quite a few. And I think so some of the initiatives that we've got currently came out of that. And MIS, for example, the safety training, and the Safety Reps Charter, the Safety Reps training, really started off with the Boots On for Safety campaign. And so we had that. We've got the personal responsibility for safety. We believe that we were one of the industry leaders in that at the time. Certainly a lot of the drilling companies fully supported. We introduced booklets and pamphlets for the whole industry to share, and quite a few people took us up. And currently we've got the Joint Up Thinking campaign, then we've got the workforce engagement. The workforce engagement was really timely for us. So it's come at the end of it. Not the best year we've ever had. We're trying to integrate the teams, trying to get the people to work together. So we're trying to engage our teams into taking up the survey. We had a 25% take-up out of hundreds of people, which wasn't very good. One thing I've learned today is that there's a different way to do these things, and that's to sit people down with a Coke and a Mars bar, give them a paper copy and say fill it out. It's easy, isn't it, when you think about it? We've talked about using a portal so the guys could fill it out at home and different things. But it wasn't that successfully taken over. No matter how many posters and town hall meetings and whatever, 25% take. So it could have been better. We plan to do it again 3Q next year to see where we are. But the results of what we did find, to be honest, were quite encouraging. It's got a race through, Dean's got a lot to do as well. And we actually came out at level 3. So we do engage the workforce, we are visible, we could get better, we could be worse. The visibility aspect of it, we were at 4, which is really pleasing. The top 5 coming industry averages was really, really good. But the bottom 5 were exactly the same 5. So that tells us that on some aspects we're really good, and on other aspects we've got a lot of work to do. So the work we're doing at the moment is to break out the survey results to see where we can plug the gaps and what we need to do. So we've done an awful lot of training over the last 18 months. We've taken people down to Edinburgh. We've done spade Adam training for a bunch of our guys. We've had safety leadership sessions, about 5 or 6 this year, more planned. So we're trying to build a team, and each of these sessions we're integrating the Beryl, the FORTIES and the Sage people, so we're the one Apache team. Now we're making great strides, but to be fair, there's a way to go yet. With a turnover in the industry, people joining us, people leaving us, and it's going to go on like that for a considerable time. So we plan to hold a survey again towards the end of next year, because it takes people to bed in, and we'll see exactly where we are. But work in progress. I mean, just to summarise, basically, we've got a solid level 3 result, which we're quite pleased with. Work to do on that. Variations were observed. And one of the key things is that we lost a lot of safety reps during the Beryl harmonisation or integration process. They decided they want to move on, they want to do different things. So we're trying to rebuild that relationship, because we know that safety reps are vital to a good safety culture. And so that's work in progress, and we're really keen to engage our safety reps and to help them along the path. At the end of the day, we've got lots of people offshore, we've got families at home, and that's where we want them to be, so the return home safely. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks all for coming along. Just while Brian changes the slide set over. My name's Ian Close, Operations Support Superintendent. This piece of work was done largely by a chap called Stuart Taylor, one of our OIMs. So any credit for what you see definitely ought to go Stuart's way. If there's any errors or omissions, that's down to me. Yesterday, I don't know that anybody here was able to attend any of the stuff yesterday, but Professor Andrew Hopkins, who's one of the world leading authorities on social and human factor causes behind major catastrophes, commented in describing 5 key features of a good safety case regime, or an effective safety case regime. One of them was the rigor and robustness of the regulator, and whilst he pointed out that in the UK, well favoured in that respect, it may not be the case elsewhere in the world. But our story here really builds on that, because it's about our response to an improvement notice that we received last year. Now, we don't like receiving improvement notices, but I think it's a good example where it was actually something that in the longer term became a benefit and an opportunity for us. So I'm going to show a lot of detail here. You won't be able to read it at the back. We're not going to have the time to go over it in too much detail, but what I would say is that the slides will be available on the Step Change website, so you get a chance to look at them there. And if there's any specific aspects, and we don't have time at the end for too many questions, but we've got a stand around the corner and you can come and ask any one of us to clarify anything. So, not going to talk about our range of assets. You can see them there in the North Sea. What I will say though is we've got about 1,200 people on site on a daily basis. That's excluding our office staff. That's people actually at the sharp end. Roughly 200 of that 1,200 will be Apache staff. The balance of 1,000 contractors of whatever persuasion, and that's the sort of population number we've got. So when you take into account the shift turnover and so on, we've got about 3,000 people in our employment. Why did we get the improvement notice? Well, it was about control of work, and it happened as a result of a routine inspection of FORTIES Alpha at the turn of the first quarter last year. It was really disappointing for us. Specifically disappointing because it was on the subject of control of work. And the reason why I say that is that we'd recognised that FORTIES had been a very early adopter of ISSOW, Integrated Safe System of Work, which I'm sure many of you will be familiar with. And we'd adopted it in 2002, and we'd recognised by 2010 that we had new people in place, we had people who were being promoted and doing different jobs, and we hadn't really gone back and thoroughly retrained people since the initial training program that was done at the time of implementation. It was just assumed that the system's up and running, you could do a bit of computer-based training, it's all working. We got an independent auditor to go out, have a look around, and the advice, amongst other things, very clear that we needed to embark on a retraining campaign, and we did that. But we did it on the basis of ISSOW itself, okay, and the training pertinent to how you operate the system. This opened our eyes to the fact that that was not deep enough response to our needs. The five specific points that were raised in the improvement notice: hot work habitats. Not a particular concern that we were doing hot work, not a particular concern with the physical habitats that we had. The concern was that we had a procedure that said each habitat will be inspected by the OIM prior to commencement of work. We thought that was pretty good. But the flaw in it is it makes assumptions about the experience and knowledge of the OIM and his ability to make a judgment over what is a good and sound habitat and what isn't. So we're into assumption territory there. The second point on document control. Over the years, we've made minor tweaks and changes, and we'd caught up with them in the pocketbook that's issued offshore for use with ISSOW. And yet, if you went back to our business management system, or safety management system as we called it at the time, the actual master document on the shelf, dated 2005, had not been updated. So when we were asked the question, well, which is it, guys? That one or that one? Guess what? We didn't have a good answer. And in that situation with duplicated documents, clearly there's the space there for something to go wrong. Anyway, performing authorities was the next topic. We recognised across our business that we had a common situation where typically a work squad foreman would take out the permits at the start of a shift, and he might have 2 or 3 squads working for him. He'd take out half a dozen permits, perhaps, a couple in his back pocket in case one job front got stopped. He'd be able to move his guys onto another one. Having got the guys started, done the toolbox talks, he disappears to his office to do his timesheets, do his daily reports, whatever it is. So actually, have we got an effective performing authority control on site? Well, arguably not. In the particular instance on FORTIES Alpha during the inspection, we certainly didn't have an effective performing authority at site, because it happened to be the day shift foreman signing permits for the night shift. So not, he's not even in his office, he's in his bed. So that clearly is not a good and tight way to be controlling, work in a hazardous area. Routines within ISSOW, for those who know it, you can use if you like, a lower level of control document than a permit for mundane type repetitive tasks. We were just making a little bit too much use of that. I think the instance we had was, for routine scaffolds up to a certain height and design. Yeah, fine. But effectively, take out one routine, you could build these things anywhere on the platform, and that was not exercising sufficient control. The final point, WCC auditing, Work Control Certificate auditing, was the one that really let us down, and the one that personally I found most disappointing. The inspectors said, right, we're going to go and audit one of your permits. Fine, we do this every day. They carried out the audit. They came back with 3 or 4 deficiencies. In my view, none of the deficiencies were too major in their own right, but if you had 3 or 4 together, it's probably something you've got a problem. But the real problem we had was that in the system, that particular permit had already been audited 3 times by our own people, and guess what? Each time it had been audited, it was 100% compliant. So, major problem with our own quality of auditing of permits. Just to give you a scale of things, across our business, our 8 sites now, around about 220 work sites open a day, around about 750 isolations in place, typical day. So very busy. All those people employed, and they're all busy doing something. A lot going on. Looking at the improvement notice and trying to put together our response to it, we recognised that, in Brian's words, as HSC manager, is this a local issue, a bad day on FORTIES Alpha, or is this something systemic across our business? And bear in mind the timing. We've taken over control of Beryl and Sage 31st of December 2011. This is now the end of first quarter 2012. With the new assets, we'd inherited Exxon's control of work system for 6 months, after which time we had to have our own system in place. So actually, there was an opportunity here, and the opportunity was to make sure that we implemented the ISSOW system in Beryl and Sage to a common standard to implementation in FORTIES, but also at the same time, more importantly, to raise the standard because we needed to. So it was an opportunity as well as a bit of a cross to bear. Stuart, when he started looking at the issue, did a document survey, an electronic search of the system, went back to 2011 and looked at all of the audits for FORTIES, as our records showed at that time. Echo Smaller platform, only 40 people maximum on board, less activity, fewer audits. So discount Echo, but the other 4 platforms all same size, same population size, all busy. FORTIES Alpha, arguably the busiest. We were just building the Bacchus project at that time and starting the FORTIES Alpha satellite project on there, and yet the fewest audits. FORTIES Charlie, by comparison, doing lots of audits. Well done, Charlie. However, when you looked at them down here, the blue bar indicates the percentage of audits that were found to be 100% compliant. So yes, they were doing lots of audits, but guess what? They're finding them all, well, 90% of them, to be 100% in compliance. We didn't believe that. You know, our experience from, you know, a cold professional pair of eyes coming onto FORTIES Alpha was that chances are that they're probably not 100% compliant. So some complacency in the system there. And if you remember back to Typo, that was one of the findings that under Occidental, permit to work was being audited, and it was all compliant, but the reality differed. But we knew here on Alpha that although they were saying roughly 50% of the permits had a defect, the ones that were supposedly 100% compliant, based on the findings of the HSE inspectors, that may not have been the case. So we knew there was some work to do. So Stuart then got his boots on and went round all of the sites, doing in-depth audits on the activities going on each site, and he came up with a whole raft of findings, some of them common across the field, others perhaps local. And here you can see there's about 6 slides of these findings, but the black type is the summary of the problem, and the blue type is what we've done about it. Also looked at the main players involved, the area authority, the isolating authority, the performing authority, and again, some issues found in how we trained and managed those roles. The one I want to talk about in a bit more detail, because I'm conscious of the red light flashing, is the performing authority. We realised that performing authorities were really guys who'd sat down at a computer, done a couple of hours CBT on how to, fill in the boxes on ISSOW. They hadn't really had thorough, in-depth training of what it was all about behind that. Now, we can't take credit for a flash of inspiration now. The industry had recognised this, the HSE had recognised this, and in fact, last year, APITO were working on a training standard for performing authorities. That training standard was published towards the end of the year. We sent a couple of experienced supervisors along to a validation course, one-day course, and the feedback was, this is really good, we've got to do this. The problem then was, how do you do it at pace? Given our population, if you've got to take people classroom size of 6 to 10 into a training room in Aberdeen, how long is it going to take to get through the kind of workforce size we've got? So the response to that was actually to take the trainers offshore, and we've done that. As of Thursday last week, we managed to get through 724 people through the APITO course, all assessed, all certificated. By the end of the programme, we'll hit about 1,000. So about 30 to 35% of the total site employees will receive the performing authority training. And I think that'll be a big step forward for us. And I think as the rest of the industry adopts it, it'll be a big step forward across the board. So just to finally sum up, complacency will creep in if you allow it to. You do need fresh eyes and rigorous eyes. Auditing standards need to be in place. We need to train auditors to do the job properly and then make sure that they're doing it properly. And the skills to conduct these roles, it's not just to do a CBT and you're in. It really does need a little bit more than that, would be the main lessons that I took away from it. So we didn't like getting an improvement notice, but we feel as a result we've actually benefited overall and beyond the terms of the original improvement notice. So, any questions? Okay. Well, I think we're meant to be through there in a minute's time.